Hi, everybody. It's Saturday, May 2nd, 2020. Can't believe it's already May. Time has really flown. So today's live stream is going to be regarding astral projection. It was one of the requests that someone had made from the first video. And it's a good topic for that. So what is astral projecting? There's different reasons people astral project, which we'll get into. But the main thing regarding astral projection, the simplest explanation is leaving your body. Our soul, our essence, leaves our body. Our body is the shell. It's also the reason that we have many past lives. And that, again, is another topic that we can discuss in the future as well. But so we leave our body. The soul exits it for various reasons, but when the soul disengages from its physical form, it then enters into our existence, whether it's this physical world that we live in day to day, or the spiritual realm that would be considered heaven, that existence that we talked about last week. So when it leaves the body, it's kind of the way to explain it would be as the soul is coming out of the system for various reasons, it allows us to basically freely move as energy forms. And since everything's energy, we just basically become part of that vibe, that stream. We leave our bodies for a few reasons. One of the most common ones that most people are very aware of is trauma, whether it's an accident, whether it's sexual abuse, whether it's a complete emotional disconnect from our physical form. And we want to check out. So there's various reasons, that would be considered trauma, because it's not just getting hit by a bus. It is that emotional breakdown that we can have over relationships, over losing a job, over losing a pet, losing a loved one. I know myself, I checked out of my body, but yet I'm still walking around. So there's various levels of checking out of our body and astral projecting. When we check out partially, most people can't even tell, right? You're still walking around, you're still talking, you're still doing what you need to do. But yet, at the same time, things are just weird. Your body tends to not respond the same way. For example, if you get a cut on a limb, a leg, an arm, and it's a minor little cut, maybe a scrape or something, when you are constantly checked out of your body, even if it's partially checked out, and those cuts, those wounds don't heal properly. They don't heal fast. Sometimes they'll take months to heal, but yet other times it seems to heal within a day or two, which is the normal healing process of a small cut. When it takes that long, it's because your soul is not in your body. And if it's not in your body, it can't heal. It can't sleep. It can't function. It needs to be whole. Your body, your mind, your soul all work together. And when one of them leaves, checks out, and it's usually the soul, it creates so many different issues and problems. So one of the reasons, as said, trauma, whether it's physical, mental, emotional trauma. Another one is abilities. I myself will astral project for various reasons as a controlled way of doing it. Some people don't even know that they're doing it, and so they're doing it out of control when it is an ability. The downside to that, there's a lot of those as well. So we're going to talk about those too. But from an ability perspective, you're usually doing it because you're trying to either seek out information, because maybe you feel comfortable on the other side, and that's where you want to be, especially if all your loved ones are there and all your family's there. Um, you could be doing it for protection of yourself in the physical world. If you're about to go into a location that maybe you're not comfortable with or you might be concerned about, and you have the ability to astral project, you can leave to go check it out. Is it safe? Is the environment not only safe, is the people that frequent there safe? So you can do it for your own safety as well. When we check out and we enter into that existence, usually we don't remember doing it. And we definitely don't know we're necessarily consciously aware of doing it when we're doing the day-to-day stuff, when we're physically awake and checked out of our bodies, at least half checked out. Because if we're walking around and talking, then we're slightly there. So, it's not a complete disconnect. But when we're sleeping, which is usually when we astral project at nighttime, we are fully usually out of our body. And we stay in that existence to our physical form with, say, like a tether line, so to speak. So a connection to our physical body. And as we go through the spiritual world or within our world, if we're staying on Earth, but yet astral projecting, that tether line just grows and grows and grows and grows and grows. But the further it goes, the smaller it becomes. When you think of that world, like, why does that matter? Why would it have to slowly get thinner? Because, it's a spirit world, right? It's Earth in an energy form. Like, why would that matter if we're all energy? And the interesting thing is because as people, we rely upon these tether lines. We rely upon certain physics to take place because of our spiritual mind. So I believe it's because we need that direct line to our body so we can get back to it, so we don't lose sight of it, so we don't, it doesn't disappear. And consciously, and this is where, if anything we can do for ourselves on a day-to-day basis, it would be to surrender, surrender to all possibilities, try not to limit yourself into a particular box, so to speak, because that's the norm or that's what society says it is. Be your unique self, be who you are, seek out what you're looking for. And if that's bad things, then, that's where you're at right now. And maybe you need to go through those things, but come out on the other side. Nobody should be pushing anything upon them. So as I say all this stuff, obviously, as I usually say, this is what I've experienced through the years of doing what I'm doing. So whether we're doing it consciously to protect ourselves, to seek out information, whether or not to protect somebody, which is usually why I astral project. It's usually I'm trying to protect somebody that I care about and that they're going into a place that may have a really negative entity, whether it's a negative spirit or demon-like or demon energy type label. But I will know it's happening on a subconscious level. And then that night before that person would go there, the next day, the next week, or relatively, close to the timeline, I will astral project consciously, but subconsciously at the same time, because again, I'm not always fully aware of what's happening on the other side. It's just as I'm starting to sleep and I go into my sleep mode, I automatically connect to them. And if I need to leave my body, I'll leave it. So sometimes, we also know we want to go to the other side to ask questions, those with abilities. The only time Rose asked, are we consciously aware we're doing it? Aware? No. Most people are not aware whatsoever. You could become aware if you are that in tune with that ability, if that's your, strongest channel, so to speak. And if it's your strongest channel, then yeah, you can work on it, embrace it, and process it in a way that you can consciously do it in and out. Like sit here in any kind of, processing, meditative state, whatever, and just close your eyes and check out of your body. Some people can do that. But that takes a lot of skill and a lot of practice. And, that's something that I choose not to do purposely. I will do it if I need to help somebody, a client usually, or a loved one, where I need to check in and go to their house to see what's going on spiritually. So I can consciously do it, but I'm not 100% there. It's more of I'm still physically grounded and yet kind of going through the energy waves to get to where I need to be. So almost like a second sight. So I would consider that more second sight versus astral projecting, but it kind of teeters on that line. So, those are the reasons that we usually do it. If I wanted to have a great conversation with my son on the other side and him and I, great. But the problem is the moment our soul comes back into our body, just like when we're born, we forget. It becomes the great forgetful event, right? And it's one of those things that unless your ability is strong on that channel and you want to consciously do this, it's one thing that I try and discourage people from doing. The reason being is not only is it that our bodies can't necessarily heal appropriately, as I was saying about the cuts, but then you don't sleep. And you need sleep. Sleep is the one thing I know for myself that I love. And when my sleep gets interrupted, I'm not happy. We all are tired. We all need to rest. And whatever that sleep timeline is for most people, for me, I can sleep 12 hours a day every day and be great. Ideally, I tend to get, 8 to 9. But I know a lot of people that maybe get an hour and they're well rested and they're fine and that's who they are. And if that's normal for them, that's fine. That works for them. But even for that one person who normally gets an hour sleep, if that gets interrupted, then everything just goes kind of downhill until you sleep again, until you can actually process again. So we need our sleep. We need our sleep to heal. We need our sleep to decompress. We need our sleep to sleep. We need that downtime. Most of us do not give ourselves the downtime that we need, even in our current situation with the pandemic. For those that are not considered frontline people, even during all this, we're not giving ourselves the time that we need to just be. We're trying to still fill the day. I do it myself. I am just as human as everybody else. And I tried to spend my time filling the day, because sitting around just, although is nice, feels wrong. So we need to sleep. We need this aspect. We need to be in our bodies to be okay. If we are astral projecting and we're checked out because of trauma, then every time you go back into your body, or attempt to, I should say, you are going to re-experience whatever that trauma is because you haven't dealt with it. It is one of the other beautiful aspects of the human body. We're meant to heal ourselves, which is great. But when there's a trauma, no matter what type of trauma it is, we don't want to go back there. And we checked out to survive. And animals, when that happens, and they come back, they kind of go through what they got to do and they finish out the process. And this tails a little bit into my fast release stuff that I do as well. So, they do what they got to do. If they're in a safe space, once the trauma occurs and they don't have to immediately run still, they get in their safe space and they go through the motions. They cry out, they, growl, they, flinch, they do what they got to do because they don't process thoughts, feelings, and emotions the same way we do, right? We overthink everything. We're taught from an early age to suck it up, that don't cry. I even did it because I didn't know better, right? At that point in my life, we only know what we know until we know it, right? And then we know something else. But, if you're not bleeding, it's not that bad. So much stuff is so terribly bad, even if we're not bleeding mentally, emotionally. Like, it's terrible, but yet we ignore it and we shove it down and we try and stop it out, So, and if we're not dealing with it, then every time, when you've checked out and you try to come back in, you're never going to want to come back in. You're going to keep hitting that wall. You're going to keep hurting. You're going to be lost within it. And then you're going to want to be out of it again, because nobody wants to feel pain, no matter what kind of pain that is. We don't want to feel this way. We all want to feel happy and loved and okay in the end, and truly be okay. But yet our versions of what okay means changes. So, for me, okay is just everybody else is okay. That's not healthy. And I recognize that. And so it's identifying what those things are, right? So each person's individual journey, you need to figure those things out. But if you're constantly still checked out because of these pains and stuff like that, and you don't deal with it, then you're going to constantly keep checking out and constantly keep checking out. And from a physical form of non-ability perspective, as a survival mechanism, you're going to have pains. You're going to be not okay. You're going to want to cry and, be emotional. You are going to experience all these things you don't want to experience. But yet when you go into it, you're going to experience it anyway. So let's experience it, right? And do what you can to get past those traumas. So how do you know you're checked out? Some people sense that they just know that they are, that they're kind of going through the day-to-day, just kind of like blah, no matter what's happening. They don't necessarily feel those emotions. Completely like a checked out situation. Some people will have a ton of physical pain. Some people won't sleep well. Some people don't heal. As I was saying, with minor cuts, it might take longer to heal. So if you have any of those kind of things, then chances are you either are checked out from a trauma, and most of people that are in that situation can pinpoint a trauma in their life, or you have abilities. And if you have abilities, it's just a matter of controlling it, to tell your energy bubble that you're not allowed to astral project, that you don't want to astral project because of various different things. So, and you do that through white light, which, I tell people how to white light all the time. It's just one of those extra rules. So for myself, I don't say that, because I tend to only do it when it's necessary. And that's great. How do you know you're doing it in the middle of the night? That's one of the biggest things, because if you've done it and then you've forgotten when you've woken up, how do you know? There are some signs that are very consistent. When you're doing it while you're sleeping and you're physically leaving your body, not partially checked out, physically leaving your body, creating that tether line to ourselves, doing whatever it is that you're doing over there, what tends to happen is one of a couple things. One, you wake up and you're exhausted, just completely exhausted. You felt like you didn't sleep at all. You could look at the clock, or the alarm clock goes off, and you're literally thinking to yourself, I just fell asleep 15 minutes ago. There is no way it's been X amount of time. And then you look, and sure enough, it's the time to wake up. Those two are the biggest tall tales of astral projection, especially the latter, the waking up after you feel like you just fell asleep. Because for your body, it just fell asleep maybe 15 minutes ago, maybe 30 minutes ago, maybe an hour ago, whatever it is that it felt like to you when that alarm went off. The other way that people know they've astral projected in the middle of the night is they'll meet somebody they've never met before. Now, sometimes that could just be a past life thing, and so you recognize their energy and your body just knows this person. It could also be the fact that this person has abilities, and if you have abilities, then you just kind of resonate with each other. But from an astral projection perspective, if you kind of feel like you just don't even have abilities at all, and you wouldn't put yourself in either one of those buckets, then you astral projected and you met this person, whether it was they were doing the same thing, or you went to their house or their location and you met them because you were about to meet them. And since the universe, when we're connected with all this energy, it knows everything. All the information is there to access. You would then have met this person because you're going to meet this person. So a lot of people who get very anxious about meeting new people will tend to do that when somebody significant is supposed to come in their life, and they don't want to miss it. Your spirit guides will guide you to that person in the astral world, so that way you can experience this person. So when you meet them in life, there's that connection already instead of an avoidance connection. Because a lot of people avoid people and places, even before the pandemic. So many people would rather just be left alone and not meet new people. So that's one. The other one is places. You going to a place you've never been before and know you've been to this place before. Could it be past life? Yes, it could be a past life situation as well. But for most people, they astral projected there because there was a reason to, whether they were going to the place and, again, due to their own uncomfortability about new situations, they needed to experience it first. So they'll go to the place while they're astral projecting, or their spirit guides would guide them there. For people who have any slight abilities and astral project, they could be doing it just, again, for their own physical safety of themselves or someone that they love, and wanting to know if this place is okay. And it could be just checking it out, going to visit, like going to the shore house for a visit, and you're just popping in there. And then when your physical body eventually catch up to that moment, whether it's the next day, the next week, the next month, next year, whichever, when you step into that space, you instantly recognize it. You instantly know it. You will know, that there's how many bedrooms are in the place, or, where the bathroom might be located. You will know where it's at. And that's one of the ways to know if you astral projected as well, because this places and people you would never experience, you've never been to, all this information about. So it's one of the signs. So sleeping, the other sign was the healing, which, I talked about, like even just the small little cuts that take forever to heal. That usually happens to me. And then I tell myself, okay, stop. I don't need to astral project for a while or get in my body, which most of the times it's the trauma, especially since losing Morgan. It just seems like every time I try, I feel like I'm moving forward. I feel like it gets squashed again. So, and I think we all experience that in everyday life. So I'm just not the exception either. Just checking my train of thoughts here. So the other things on why it's bad. So we obviously, the main reasons are health. Another reason that it can be bad is some of us may not want to come back. I've experienced that no matter what my outside body was doing, and it occurred during a myofascial release session. I was astral projected to the other side, and even though I was very aware of where my body was, again, hence tether line, again, even though I'm not seeing it, I know I can feel it. I can feel my body. When I was over there, I interacted with some spirits that was my prior husband in a different life and my child that I lost as well in that life. And it was so beautiful and so loving and so peaceful that honestly, I didn't want to leave. I just wanted to stay there. And this was when my son Morgan was still alive as well. And I had so much to be here on this, on earth in my physical form, but yet spiritually being a part of that family again and feeling the love and seeing my child and seeing my husband who I loved so much. It was very difficult to want to consciously leave. I can still feel it as I'm telling you this story, as I see their spiritual form in this realm, because again, energy is energy, but as humans, still alive people, we want to make sense of things, even in the spirit world. So the way that I would describe them is this like a luminescence of the shell of the person, like what they look like in their physical form, but just glowing, so I was able to see every detail of them. And as I don't recall how long, it probably wasn't more than 5 or 10 minutes, but however long in human world, in our physical form, in the spiritual form, I felt like I was there for a long time, and I really just did not want to leave. I was happy in that space. And it wasn't until I heard my therapist say, you can come back now, that consciously I came back to my body. And he described it as I told him what I was experiencing and how much I didn't want to leave there. He said my physical body did not show that. My physical body looked like it was in pain and discomfort and just making this like weird face, So, and again, that just shows to me even more that disconnect when our soul is not within our body, and how much the body, mind gets affected if it's not there from our soul perspective, from our essence, whatever you want to call it. So sometimes we don't want to leave. And if we don't want to leave, people go into comas. And usually when people go into comas that are not related to a trauma, a physical, reason to go into a coma, and they just suddenly go into a coma, that is usually because they checked out of their body and they didn't come back. And whether they consciously didn't come back because they didn't want to, or while they're out and about, that tether line, so to speak, breaks. And it breaks from maybe we went too far. Maybe we're going too long. Some cases, it's really negative entities or energies that are around us that maybe wants to kind of separate us from that space, because that's what they're trying to do in our physical bodies. They're trying to cause harm and pain and dysfunction and stuff, so that way we can then leave, our existence here, and they win, which is kind of weird to say, but so with that, sorry, I'll get to your question in a second, Rose. So with that, if that were to happen, it's 50-50, you're going to wake up. 50-50, you wake up because, you find your body, you come back in, you wake up. You never wake up. Sometimes people go into a coma and then they wake up and they're a completely different person, like completely. And it could very well be that person went to the other side. They saw their life. They saw what they wanted to be. They saw how to get there, and they didn't forget about it. So when they came into this body, they became a completely different person, a better person of themselves. But usually you can still see hints of who they were, especially memories. A lot of their memories, depending on a trauma, especially if it's a coma situation where it's physical, and they disconnected from their body. What ends up happening is, they could lose all their memories. And I know that's a medical thing for your brain as well, but there are some times where it's just because it's not the same person. And when that new soul came into that physical form, they're not going to have the memories of the person prior at all. So how do you bridge that gap? How do you know what that answer is? Because you have all this wonderful spiritual stuff, and then you have all the wonders of science. And how do you bridge them? How do you get them to join together and have an understanding of which is which, instead of diagnosing a label that may or may not be right for that person? It's a challenge. And that's why no matter what happens, no matter what that label is, if that's what we need right now, then that's what we need right now. But if it doesn't feel right to you, that's who you are, that's the label you should have, then dismiss the label. Seek out your own information. Seek out somebody that maybe, like myself, who sees spiritual stuff, who gets information out, that can fill in the gaps for you. But that can happen. So another reason that astral projecting can be bad, because even if you didn't mean to get disconnected from your body and you don't come back to it, and your body dies and no other soul jumps into it, which usually only negative entities would do that anyway. But even with all that said, it's still left with all that sadness and pain that we leave behind, that our families feel, because in the end, this is what it is. So astral projecting is something that is very unique, has a lot of benefits, has a lot of downsides, and should truly only be done from an ability perspective with complete control. From a trauma perspective, everyday life, every person walking around on this earth that has gone through some form of trauma, whether they're still in it or not, and they're still checking in and out of their body because they're not dealing with that trauma, you need to seek out somebody who can help you through trauma therapy, whether it's through body work, such as myofascial release, because that has helped me far more than talk therapy ever could or would. But that's where my mindset is. But I've shifted and learned that talk therapy also helps some as well. So it's finding that right balance, but it's also finding where you are in your current existence of life. You may not want to talk about it. And if feeling is healing, in the end, you need to feel it. So talking can get you to be able to feel it, but in the end, you got to feel it. So, and that's where some talk therapy can help, because you'll still experience it and you'll still feel it. But body work, myofascial release, letting yourself go, letting yourself re-experience, feel those traumas, process it, because it's very interesting how much we miss when we check out. So we need to feel it. All right, so Rose asks, does this relate to Alzheimer's types of coma? So that one that's an interesting topic for me. The reason being is, as I always say, there's exceptions to the rules, right? Nothing is ever 100%. And I honestly don't feel it should ever be 100%, because then it doesn't leave wiggle room for anything else. If we're 100% certain, okay, but that dismisses somebody else's who thinks it's 100% certain this way. And that, I know that's a whole other conversation we can go down. But, even with some people's eyes, not being able to see certain colors, whether they're colorblind, partially colorblind, whether they had an injury such as myself that made me partial colorblind in one eye, I can look at a tree, and we all know most trees are green, right? Green leaves. But they may see that as gray. They may see that as slightly green, And again, if we're 100% saying 100% this, it dismisses somebody else's perspective. And that perspective to them, whether it's physical, emotional, or mental, is just as important as ours. So Alzheimer's, dementia, which now they're calling it, sorry, I'm not in thinking mode because I'm connected to the spirit world. So cognitive dysfunction, had to check out a little bit, or check back in, I should say. They're calling them now both cognitive dysfunction, because that's just the new terms that they're using, but we all know them as Alzheimer's and dementia. What I've seen with that is 99% of the time, when I hear of somebody in those states, one of two situations is occurring. And I would say probably both at the same time. So it's not really one of two. It's probably and. But again, how we put things into labels and perspectives, we probably would do an either or when it's really and situation. So one thing that I've seen is that people who get this type of cognitive dysfunction, it's because they have abilities and either didn't know it, have blocked it for so long that they've shut it out. Maybe they knew it when they were younger. But they have some form of strong ability, or their head is so tight that it's compressing and it's putting a lot of stress on the brain and the brain function. When it's an ability perspective, one of the ways that I see is I can see people's abilities, right? So I can get a sense somebody has it, what level, what their channels are, blah, blah, blah. When I see somebody who has abilities and they have cognitive dysfunction, the way that I see them, it's like I can see them completely connected to the spirit world still, even though they're still alive. And when I connect into the spirit world, they feel like they're dead to me because they're on the other side so much, but yet they're physically here. And there are times where I'm with a client and I want to talk about someone in this kind of state because I think they've already passed, because I feel them on the other side because they spend so much time there, but yet they're still alive. So that usually is an indication for me that they're in some form of cognitive dysfunction, Alzheimer's, dementia, and they're in the other world all the time. When they go over there, whether it's because, of spiritual abilities, right, really it's what it is, when they come back from it, from the spirit world, they know everything. They're very lucid. This is why, after they've slept, so to speak, whether it's a night or a nap, they wake up and they're very, very aware of where they're at, maybe stories they've forgotten about, maybe kids that they've forgotten about. They may not remember everything, but they remember some stuff where just hours before, they completely forgot all that stuff. And it's because, again, once you're over on the other side, you know everything. You come back to your physical form, you tend to forget it immediately, at least we do. But those that are in that cognitive dysfunction, when they're traveling over onto the other side, they're still remembering it. And I believe it's the way that their brain is now functioning in general as things are starting to deteriorate and break down. Because again, science is still a thing. So they can see breakdown within the brain and what it's doing. The neurons not firing, various different things. So they are seeing that. So you have that level, which for a lot of people, they also have too tight of their head. How many of you can put your hand on your hair or your scalp and move it? You see how I'm moving it back and forth? You should be able to move it. If I go to the what side, right? You see, I'm barely moving. If I go to the left, it moves a little bit better. If I go back, it barely moves. So I'm restricted on my head from moving to the right and moving backwards. And if this all starts to clamp and crush down upon you, it's going to change how your brain works. So now you have a physical reason too that can create cognitive dysfunction. So we have abilities and we have that. So those that are not spiritually going to the other side, and maybe just 100%, structural, too tight of a fascia around the brain and the head and the skull and all that stuff, they tend to not ever become lucid because they're not going over there. So they're the ones that you see just never seem to have a clear day. And that's where we're physically hitting all of that. Allie asks, do meds disrupt our ability to travel? They can. Depends on the meds. So the meds that we get from either a doctor or a psychiatrist for anybody with abilities can absolutely hinder the process. It depends on the med itself because, we know all meds are different. Depends on how long you've been on the med as well because, sometimes you'll hear like, well, you build up a tolerance to it. And if you build up a tolerance to it, then we need to give you more. That is, again, science, so that can happen. But then what also happens is your spiritual self, your soul finds a way. Just like life finds a way, your spiritual self finds a way. We try to connect. We try to open up. We try to get into that spiritual world because that's like going home for a lot of us, especially those that still have their abilities on. And because we're all born with it and we're all born with that connection, it's home to be connected and be physically and spiritually with the other side, to be connected as one big whole. So the body eventually will start to find a way to still break those barriers down, to move past, to go where we need to be. Some medicine will put us there faster. If it's a sleeping aid and you're completely going down, it's possible you are doing astral projecting and you don't even have a clue. And then you wake up and you're just exhausted and feel like it's side effects from the meds, because some meds do that. So it seems like today I keep saying, well, between this and that, but everything is this and that. We always should use and versus or. We should not use but and, because every time we want to say but, we know the but's true. We know the prior is true. So why are we not using and? So we need to incorporate the balance of spiritual and science, because in our physical forms, we're never going to let go of that science. There are some people that can, but even myself, I look for the scientific reason for a loud bang in my house, or something moving, or a sound. I will look for the scientific reason first, not just because I'm in my physical form and we want to understand, and it's because when we know we're connected to that spiritual moment of that time, a lot of times we can breathe a little bit easier. So if we were just in a state of hearing some spiritual stuff, kind of reassess what you were doing in that moment. Were you breathing? Were you relaxing? Were you vegging out? Were you just being? Because a lot of times that's when it will come on. Because loud bangs and things like that, yeah, they happen all the time. Do we hear them? No. Even for myself. I know there's 100 spirits running around this house and moving around this house, and they're making noise, and they're bumping into things, and they are doing things, but it doesn't necessarily come through in the physical world. And a lot of that is because I'm not 100% connected to the spiritual world all the time. So when it comes to meds, yes, it can disrupt things. And I've been trying to stop saying but myself. And they're given to us to help for a reason. Whether that was meant to be temporary, or if in the doctor's opinion it would be a lifelong drug, that's their opinion in that moment. Doesn't mean it doesn't need to be reassessed and reevaluated. Doesn't mean that you can eventually come off that medicine once you start to balance certain things in your life. Even pain meds, we're all in some form of pain. Not all of us take pain meds. Some of us do as needed. Some of us abuse them. If we can go through and deal with whatever it is that's causing that pain, whether it's structural, emotional, or mental, then we can eventually stop those as well. So everything is potential. Each person, whenever somebody comes to me and they're on meds, or the doctor wants to put them on meds and they're not sure if they should go on them, I always tell the person what their pasts are, with or without them, what is causing whatever the issue is, whether it is truly physical or spiritual or both. And then I tell that person, you do what you feel is right for you, knowing your information from your professional doctor, knowing whatever it is that you feel resonates to be true. So when I have somebody who is labeled bipolar, it's another good example of meds, because that's a common one nowadays, or ADHD for kids, that's another common one, is 99% of the time they are spiritually connected. And they are being affected by spirits, whether they're running around playing with them nonstop, or someone's always talking to them from an ADHD perspective, or from bipolar perspective, you're feeling everybody's pain. You're feeling everybody's emotions. You're feeling everything. And you don't know it's coming from external. So you think it's all you, and that you're in this mood swing, and 1 minute you're laughing, and the next minute you're crying, and the next minute you're freaking out, and the next minute you have such terrible back pain, or you feel like you're having a heart attack. If you go to see a doctor, they're going to label you bipolar. They're going to give you medicine. And that may work for you. Great. Use it. But when it's not working anymore, you can go back, re-up it. That's the best thing that you have and the options you have at that moment. Great. Do those things. If you are spiritually connected and your main channel is an empath, it's never going to stop until you get it under control from a spiritual perspective. Once it's under control, then is when I would suggest to the person who wants to be off the meds to talk to their doctor about weaning off the medicine and see what happens, because you can always go back on it. But you always want to do it from a safety perspective, because as we discussed with astral projecting, and a lot of things can want you to not go back to your body, and a lot of reasons to not want to go back to your body. The same thing can happen with any other ability that's being medicated. You can feel like things got 1,000 times worse if you don't have it under control. And if we put ourselves into that state, who's to say we're not going to take that step and actually check out of our physical body through suicide, through just complete disconnect, being a walking zombie, which most of us can tend to be nowadays. And that risk of those things is real and need to be taken seriously. And I'm not saying that, as soon as you go off your meds or whatever, you become suicidal. No, it doesn't really work that way. Yet at the same time, well, it can work that way. I don't want to say it doesn't work that way. It can work that way. But what I am saying though is we've all had moments in our life, at least most of us, 99%, whatever percentage we want to use, have moments in our life where we don't want to be here. Doesn't make us suicidal. And that's something that is hard to talk about, because the moment we say these things, no matter who we say it to, they think you're suicidal, or they're worried you're suicidal, or they say, well, go get help, because they don't know what else to say. When in the meanwhile, all you want to do is say, you know what, I'm really sad and I'm really not happy. And if I got into a car accident and died, I'd be okay with that. Or if I just, turn the wheel and run into a tree, we've all had thoughts where if we're not here, no matter what the means are, that we would be better off or that we'd be happier. And that might be true. It usually is from a personal perspective, because once we get to the other side, it's a whole different experience. But the sadness that's within the world really kind of keeps us here. So really keeps us here, because we don't want to let go. We're not suicidal. I tell people all the time, especially mostly since my son died is really where I would tend to think about, like, I don't care if I'm here or not. If I were to die, especially with the cancer, the breast cancer and stuff, that I was okay to die. It was a hard truth for me to say it to people, especially for some people to hear. But in the end, okay, I wasn't suicidal, but I was accepting that I'm okay. It's okay. It's okay to be overwhelmed. It's okay to, want things to stop, want things to slow down. It's okay. But knowing the difference between somebody who's truly suicidal versus somebody who's just sad and lost and don't want to be here, completely different. And so we got to be okay to talk about those things as well. Let's see. Rose asked, 2 mystery diseases come to mind: fibromyalgia, lupus, autoimmune diseases. So fibromyalgia is one that usually would be a structural problem. The fascia system is too tight, so myofascial release is really the best way to release those all over body pains and dysfunction that's going on. There are a few people who are strong empaths that could feel that, but they're usually also feeling, heart attack symptoms, extreme migraines. They will feel like they got stabbed in the back. They'll be sitting next to somebody who had knee surgery and then feel their knee hurt. They tend to not have extreme fibromyalgia. It's usually aches and pains that are from the spirits or from the person sitting next to you that you're experiencing. Because again, being connected to the spirit world. But those with extreme fibromyalgia from head to toe, it's usually a structural problem and they need to have structural work done. Lupus, autoimmune diseases. Okay, so obviously there's the science stuff, and when we can see that the body is not working appropriately from a science perspective, there's usually two things that are contributing to it. One, again, is structural. If the fascia is too tight, it's compressing. And if it's compressing on everything and not just my head, as I was showing you. That compression is going to affect the entire structure from head to toe because it's one big system. So as it's compressing and as it's changing, it's causing cells to change. It's causing the body to not change appropriately. It's causing dysfunction, which can be autoimmune as well. And there are some people where the autoimmune issue is coming into play because they're checked out of their body. They're in the astral plane, whether they're partially there or physically there. So, for example, breast cancer. They have studies out there that shows when you compress the breast cells, they become cancerous. You release the pressure, they tend to not be cancer anymore because the body's not fighting it. Autoimmune, the body's fighting it. Why is the body fighting itself? Compression issues. Being out of your body. Your body's not in it. It can't heal. It can't be there to process. So, and I like that I keep hearing from the spirit world, science and spirit, because they truly are connected. They truly are dovetailed. They truly are what makes us whole. And we can't just dismiss one and go to the other 100% because it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Balance is everything. And we need balance in not only our life for day-to-day emotional worlds, but also our physical body. So anybody who has any kind of diagnosis, I always mention for them to seek out an MFR therapist, not because I do it, but only because it changed my life in so many ways, including airborne allergy that would put me into an anaphylactic shock. I don't have that anymore. And it was all because of emotional traumas that I experienced in this life as well as in past life that came up during a myofascial release session. So, but it also changed my body structure, which stopped me from getting both my knees replaced how old am I? 45. So in 5 to 15 years. That was the plan when I was 35 years old, is to wait until I was 50 or 60. And myofascial release changed that. And if I didn't go down that path, where would I be, right? Losing my son. I believe I got breast cancer from the emotional pain and not wanting to be in my body and being checked out, and then my body closing in on itself. Every time I thought of my son, I could feel my heart tighten down. And when I first got the skin cancer, it was on my back near my heart. And then my first breast cancer scare was close to my rib cage by my heart. So body, mind, soul is everything. We all need to be integrated. It all needs to be one. It all needs to be within harmony. And it all needs to be looked at, not just the body, not just the mind, not just the soul. We have to combine it all. Veronica asks, is there a way to know if a dream is actually a dream or if it's a glimpse of projecting? So dreams, and that I know I'll get into more details about dreams in a different session because that could take a while as well. And oh, wow, we got 5 minutes. So quick wrap up on that question. The time went super fast. This is my world every day. So usually the problem. So let's break that into two parts. So a glimpse of projecting. When we talk about deja vu, what I have learned through what I do is deja vu is not, it's not a glimpse of the future, right? Because you're already in the here and now, and yet you're experiencing it. What it is that at some point in your past, you were on the other side or sleeping or whatever, or family members gave you a dream that you don't remember. And then of this moment of time, of this interaction, of the deja vu moment, and then your physical world caught up to it. And usually when that happens, that tells me to tell the person that says that you're on the right path, even if you hate the path you're on, that this is where you currently are for reasons that you're on it. And you may not know what those reasons are yet. So usually when you get a dream that's for projecting of like, it is the future, a glimpse of the future, it's not usually in a dream state. If you're getting it while you're sleeping, or so to speak, chances are you're not really sleeping and that you're kind of half awake and you're listening to somebody on the other side, because otherwise it just, you'll forget. Most times when we're dreaming, we wake up and we forget our dreams. We don't know what our dreams are. But if we're communicating and someone is giving us information, if we're seeing our loved one on the other side and having this wonderful dream and we remember all those details, which I usually do because of the spiritual aspect of it, and it's not that I'm dreaming, I'm getting messages, then you're communicating and you're there. When you're dreaming, you don't remember those. You wake up knowing you had a dream and maybe having bits and pieces of it, but really can't fill in the pieces at all. So dreams is a deep one that we'll get into. I'm not sure if I have that. I know I have it written down. I don't know if that's next week or if it's the following one, but I'll put a post out there as to what next week's topic is. So, yeah. So if you dream and you don't remember it, then it's a dream. But otherwise, you were communicating and processing it. And then I'm going to write this question down, and that'll be one of the topics for the future dream one, too. So I can go into a little bit more detail, because that was kind of like a high overview versus, really kind of diving deep. And it's because we're on almost at our time here. All right. Okay. All right, so thank you everybody for joining me, and I will see you guys next Saturday. Well, not see, but you'll see me.